Thank you for taking the time out of your super busy day. I know you're gearing up for a big keynote tomorrow. So on behalf of the tech team, thank you for the few minutes we're getting with you.
It's my pleasure. It truly is.
To start things off, maybe we can kind of go back to not the beginning of time. You're not that old, but tell us about your journey to becoming, the Citrix CEO and now a board member on WorkSpot. Maybe
Oh,
walk
man.
us through that if you could.
Yeah, I can. I'll try to make it brief because I am old. But in 1995, I was lucky enough to be introduced to and join Citrix as the VP of marketing. And my first job was to launch WinFrame, believe it or not, in my second week on the job. And WinFrame then led to MetaFrame, which led to Presentation Server, XenApp, XenDesktop. I think everyone knows that trajectory. And of course, partners were like essential to our growth.
Mhm.
And I had very much inherited, but also had in my bones this belief in partners. And a lot of people don't understand that belief in partners, requires a lot of trust, number one, and an understanding that that's how you get leverage on your growth by getting, other companies who can make a profit, satisfying customers by selling and servicing your product. So it's a fundamental principle of how Citrix was built and how it was when I got there and there were 50 people. So fast forward a lot of years, I spent almost 21 years of my life there. I was promoted to president in 1998 and then CEO in 1999. And then I retired as CEO, 10,000 employees, about 3.3 plus billion in revenue. On Back to the Future Day, which is October 21st, 2015. And that's the day that Doc dials into the DeLorean. Okay, that's why it's known as Back to the Future Day. So I was serving on one outside board at Equifax. I was invited to join two other boards, a private board, a company called Adaptive Insights, and a company called Keysight, which actually is the original HP. It's the company that Bill and Dave invented in the garage in Palo Alto that did electronic test and measurement. So they had gotten spun out into their own business, and it was called Keysight, and I was invited to join the board. So I was getting a lot of board experience, which is great experience, sitting across the table from really experienced executives, and you learn a lot, and you're there also to give advice. And I then was mentoring the founder of a cloud company called DigitalOcean. And our customer was the digital entrepreneur, and it wasn't sort of the AWS customer, it was a whole different type of customer. And I was mentoring the founder and CEO, and after about 6 months, he said, "Hey, Mark, I have an idea. Why don't we trade places?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Why don't you be CEO and I'll advise you?" And after thinking about it and talking to my family, and I had the itch, I said, okay. So the company needed a positioning, a strategy, a message. It needed an executive team. It needed a bunch of things to scale. And, we got those things in place. And I said, hey, guys, after about a year, I said, we're off to the races. So why don't I find a successor so I can go back to my so-called retirement and doing board work. And I had joined the board of directors of Arista Networks, and I was then an advisor to WorkSpot. And WorkSpot, the short version of its history, was founded by Amitabh Sinha. He was a senior engineer and engineering leader at Citrix in the XenApp group. And he came to me after we made our cloud strategy announcement. It was called Project Avalon. And he came to me afterwards. He was excited. This is great. But Mark, here's the bad news. We need to start over. And I said, what do you mean? He said, designing for the cloud is very different than designing for the data center. And we have to start over in two ways. Technologically, we have a lot of reusable stuff, but we've got to learn a lot about microservices, Kubernetes, um, uh, well, infrastructure as a service, et cetera. And then we have to get a team that knows how to write code like that. And it's kind of like in the old days, um, you were a Java guy or you weren't a Java guy, right? And if you weren't a Java guy, you couldn't write Java, right? It was that simple.
Right.
So that's what he was trying to tell me, but it didn't register. So we didn't do it. He left the company and started WorkSpot to build a cloud native infrastructure for enterprise VDI. So I was an advisor, and for I think probably 2 to 3 years, and I'll never forget, like my first in the first year, I went over and got a full technical debrief, and my jaw dropped because they said, "What's wrong?" And I said, how you built this is so different from the way we built things, infrastructure, assuming on premises. And I just wouldn't want to be the CEO of a company that had to deal with the transition from the on-premises sort of architecture to the cloud native architecture. Because I just couldn't believe it, all right, how different it was and how superior it was in a lot of ways, which we could talk about. So I got, I believed. And then in 2020, in the summer of 2020, I had the kind of Amitabh came over to my home. We were in my backyard. We were chatting. We had to sit, whatever feet apart.
6 feet.
And I said, Amitabh, how can I help you, go faster or whatever? He goes, join the board. And I said, okay, let me meet the board members because I had not met any of them. And I met with them, and I liked all of them. A very, collegial, functional board. And then once I joined, they asked me to be chairman. And part of being chairman was to be much more active in the company in its evolution. Because at that time, the company was actually it built its own technology, but we sold the whole stack. So we were like an MSP, all right? And it took a while to figure out that, wait, let's just separate out the infrastructure, give customers choices of multiple clouds and multiple platforms on premise, like Nutanix, for example, VMware, et cetera. And then let the customer choose their platform, all right, and the infrastructure. And then we'll just run the SaaS service that drives it and through a single pane of glass. And that's the strategy pivot we made last year. And that allowed us to then get busy with partners. And that's actually the conversation with XenTegra. That's where it started, when we were in that pivot, and you guys helped us figure it out. And much in the same way that partners helped us at Citrix in those early days figure out how to be a good partner, how to put a good program together, et cetera. So here we are now working with partners, selling a cloud native SaaS offering that does enterprise VDI in a hybrid multi-cloud kind of model.
So Mark, just picking up on Barry's question, 25, 27 years ago, you built a cult. So VDI and Citrix was like, we always made fun internally working as an employee that it's a Kool-Aid that we all drink, and once you drink this, there is no going back.
Yeah.
Now, if we have to reflect this, and as we are talking about future of VDI, how does that, what we did 25 years ago with Citrix being the only provider, future thinking, visionary. Now, how do we take this when we talk about VDI 2.0, cloud first generation?
It's a wonderful question. So I think, so first of all, the cult was built out of belief, right? And we used to say, work is not a place. That's like a core belief, right? Which was way bigger than any of us, right? And so let's show our belief in the software we build, number one. And then number two, let's practice and attract people that share our values: respect, integrity, humility. Okay? In other words, good people.
Right.
Good people, right?
Mhm.
And it just turns out when you take good people that see something they believe in, all right, it happens. It detonates because you're doing something. Good people like to do good things and doing things you believe in that are good for customers. And not everyone in the industry thought we were good, because we got called a lot of names in those days, if you remember. Screen scrapers.
Yeah.
We would extend the life of a PC on the desktop. Oh, they're saving the whales. All of that. It's like, we don't really call us names. Sticks and stones can break our bones, but customers are better off with us, right? And then the other thing that I remember that created the cult is that partners would take the software, take our not for resale, license, set it up, and then go to a customer's office and dial back into their, to their whatever data center or their office, and do a demo. And everyone was so proud to do that demo because it blew customers away. Like, how are you running a 3-tier client server application at this performance over a 19.2, 14.4, whatever it was connection, right? So that was part of the belief and part of the pride that we all shared, I think, in being able to do that. So now fast forward, all right? So there are a lot of Citrites at WorkSpot, and while we haven't really talked a lot about our culture, our culture is really built out of the same set of values, human values, where we respect everyone. We accept hierarchy as a necessary, I like to say, evil for managing complexity, but not as a proxy for the respect that each individual receives and is owed. And that allows you to break down all of the walls and the silos in an organization, and for everyone to work together, no matter what your title is, et cetera, to make a partner and a customer successful. So that's one piece that we have at WorkSpot. Now, in thinking about VDI 2.0, like what's next? So what's next is this cloud native hybrid multi-cloud platform. That's what's next, all right? And I'm speaking on behalf of WorkSpot. Obviously, I believe in what we do. I believe we are the first to actually offer this kind of platform in a SaaS, multi-tenant model, and where you can have your choice of Azure, AWS, GCP, Nutanix, VMware, Hyper-V, and you can have desktops and apps running on any combination of those, so that the end user gets the maximum experience with lowest latency, but it's all controlled from a SaaS offered control plane through one pane of glass. It's kind of the dream. I mean,
It sure
I remember in the old days, people would say, why do we have so many consoles? Why do we have to know so much techie stuff? And I think partners have gone, through several metamorphoses over my time, right? From in the beginning, you made your money selling the product, and your whole goal was to be product forward. So you were taking something into the customer that would just blow them away, and you were the smartest person on the planet to them on it, and they bought it from you, and you made a margin on selling the product. Then it morphed into being really more services. Products got more complex, and more services were required. And so you made that jump to more balance, and actually services became a bigger piece of the relationship with the customer. Then comes the cloud, and SaaS types of offerings. And that required a whole different type of business model mindset. And XenTegra has done an amazing job of navigating all that change, because it's hard. It's really hard, and there are a lot of bodies lying, on either side of the road in that journey. And so in this world, unlike the BDI 1.0 world, you spend most of your time solving customers' business problems, and a much smaller fractional part of the time in the bits and bytes. You don't design the infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
It's all built, all right? So what you do is you design the landing zone in the cloud and the interface to whatever infrastructure on premise or cloud, and then you point it at the business problem, customer care centers, call centers. Oh, we just did an M&A. We've got to deliver these apps in our standard desktop to these 500 new employees that are in Toledo, Ohio, right? Or we have a new project. We found some amazing engineers in Pune, all right? And so we want to deliver a development environment there. We're a distributed manufacturing company that has plants all over the world, but we have to work off the same set of engineering drawings, et cetera, to build the products consistently. So you focus on that, you're way more value to the customer, and the technology is clearly more valuable to the customer, as opposed to all the services to know what registry keys to change and blah blah blah, and how to connect an A to a B to a Z.
So on the same note, Mark, so one thing that you always had this futuristic view, and we talked about cloud, we talked about artificial intelligence, on how that is coming.
Yes.
One thing that Andy always talks about, the challenge that we see with VDI, if we talk about future, is if we have to align with artificial intelligence, if you have to align with VDI 2.0, we need to find the way data is scattered right now. It is extremely difficult. So for you to keep up with the future of 2.0, the biggest thing that Andy always talks about is ServiceNow. And ServiceNow becomes the heart, because the first thing for you to get to the vision that you want to get to is consolidate everything, automate everything. And once you have automated, now you know that artificial intelligence, when it comes in, we are ready. How do you see that when we talk about WorkSpot, or when we talk about the future of VDI, artificial intelligence playing a role, and these scattered data that we have in multi-tier architecture that we lived in many, many years ago?
Right.
How do we bring all those things together?
Yeah. Wow, Mohan, you're always great at asking the Einstein question. Okay. So I'd say, first of all, there are various categories of AI, and therefore how it's applied. So you'll see WorkSpot really adopt AI to drive more capabilities around self-healing, around learning from across customers, like where security issues are and solving them before they're a problem. So we'll get very predictive in the infrastructure. We collect all this because we were an MSP. We built all this telemetry into WorkSpot so that we could run it reliably, because we offered financial SLAs. So now all of that, because now we're a fully SaaS model, all of that value accretes to partners and customers. And so that's where we'll use AI inside the product. Okay. And we'll be able to tell you more about what's going on with your end user community than anyone will be able to tell you, right? I think that will actually have an interesting effect, because then I think more and more enterprises will decide, people who are using these virtual desktops and apps, they get better service, better security, our compliance is better, the economics are better. Why aren't we building a computing utility, all right, that delivers our computing infrastructure, our computing environment to everyone in the company this way, all right? And then over time, AI, there's going to be a lot more. It's our early innings, right? But on-device AI, we won't obviate that because you do need devices,
Yep.
right, to access the enterprise service, right? And so this whole idea of, you remember back in 2001, we talked about the virtual workplace.
Right.
So I just think that idea lives on, because as soon as you can virtualize something, you can have it wherever you want it. It doesn't necessarily mean work from home. It means that it's virtualized and it's more secure, it's more control, it could be higher performing if it's built properly. And then it can utilize all of the AI facilities that are part of Windows, let's say, Copilot, or more likely part of what I like to call enterprise AI, which is just, it's very early, right? Where companies are trying to figure out, all right, how do I protect all my proprietary data within my four walls without shipping it out to, what we'll call it an intelligence center instead of a data center, an intelligence center, where they do all the training, et cetera. How do I do that? All right. Well, they'll do it in their data center on platforms that there's lots going on with open source, et cetera. At Nutanix, we have something called GPT in a box. It's a reference architecture on top of the Nutanix platform, and you can tie that into all your data. It stays in your enterprise, and then you can expose it, and I've seen some really interesting AI governance products that are, it's still early, but a layer on top that then gives you, it's almost, it's kind of like, the policies that you have in AD, all right? But applied to AI.
Yeah, yep. Sorry, one more on the same note. I remember back in 2007, I think you flew Virgin and you saw there was self-service part. And then you said in one of the Synergy keynote, you brought up that use case and you said, this is the future.
Yeah.
Self-service.
Yeah.
So when we talk about artificial intelligence, and then you go layer up self-service on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mohan, I'm not exactly sure, but I think we've had a peek at this. So one of our actually largest and longest standing customers at WorkSpot, what they did is they integrated us with ServiceNow. So, by the way, WorkSpot, we have this amazing telemetry, but I don't think anyone has more APIs than we have. It's sort of out of necessity, and it's often the case with cloud native kinds of products to start with. So what they did is they used their APIs and they built a connector to ServiceNow. So, and they actually hire a lot of developers around the world.
Right.
And so if they hire someone, they send them an email with a link. They click it. It brings up ServiceNow. They select the kind of machine they want.
Right.
Okay, and they get a return email. It's provisioned within an hour probably. All right. It depends on what platform.
Yeah.
It does matter a little bit, but still hours. Okay, and they get an email back with another link, and they've got their full development environment. So, and that's without AI, trying to predict what kind of machine they should have, et cetera. But I see a day when it'll actually predict the kind of machine you have, and it'll actually automatically scale the machine up and down based upon kind of your usage, because we're getting smarter and smarter, because the system is learning, it's being trained by usage, right? So I don't know if that's a great answer.
No, it is a great answer, and the keyword is ServiceNow and VDI, because we see this as one of the backbone of, if we are talking about futuristic 2.0,
yes,
it needs to have a centralized
yes
place where we can massage all those data,
Yeah.
and then bringing it in ServiceNow and automating it
Yeah.
is what we see this as a future.
Well, you know, I'm gonna say something that's maybe going to be a little provocative, all right, but that's okay. We're friends. So I really don't like the term EUC.
Okay.
The problem with that is no one cares whether I like it or not. Okay. So in thinking about it, all right, end user computing, I mean, what does it really mean? Actually, I think the only people that use the term EUC are VDI people. Okay. And I don't like that. That's not thinking big, and that's not thinking about the future. Okay. So part of this 2.0, you know, doesn't have it. VDI plays a role in it.
Yep.
Okay. It's not end user computing. It's enterprise utility computing. Okay. It's where the computing that drives the enterprise is offered as a utility, the way water and electricity is offered,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And to run a utility, you have to be able to manage customer subscriber accounts, right? You need to give them offers of various types, you know, peak pricing, you know, all of these different sorts of things.
Yeah.
And you need something like a service now,
Yeah.
right, to front end that. But then once they're provisioned, the power gets turned on, then they need to just be able to go to a socket and plug in an appliance,
Yeah.
right? And so part of the new EUC, enterprise utility computing, will involve appliances in a huge way. And I know we're here at an iGel event, and you know, I love what iGel is doing, and I think that, you know, they're one of the few companies that's really built a platform for appliances, for powering appliances. Not only the local OS, but also the management infrastructure required, you know, for those appliances. So it'd be just like that. You take a toaster, you plug it in. You don't worry about, oh, where did that power? Did it come from a solar grid? Did it come from a wind farm, nuclear, whatever? You don't worry about it. And so the enterprise computing utility will be a grid of hybrid, multi-cloud compute and services, all right, streamed over the network, you know, to appliances. And I think it can become ubiquitous.
I love it. I love this new EUC term, and it sums up everything together.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see you smile.
It had to, my wheels are turning a little bit, but yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me ask one final question from me. I'm just curious. You're the king of culture building within Citrix, right? So with COVID came, COVID went. You know, people went home to work. Some people went back to the office. What do you think the ideal culture is from a work from anywhere perspective? Is it a hybrid or is it in the office?
Yeah, well, you know, the answer to that question is going to vary by type of company, size of company. You know, companies that have a strong apprenticeship kind of model, like law, banking, you know, there are a bunch of them. All right. I mean, you know, they call a doctor, you know, they call it a practice for a reason, right? It's an in-person thing. All right. So you're not going to eliminate that. It's just what you want is the flexibility to offer any mix of in-person and, you know, work from anywhere, let's just say.
Yep.
And then even the in-person, let it be powered by the utility, all right? And then every company's got to decide on its own. But, you know, I believe that culture, so the definition of culture, in my mind, is it's how companies, teams get things done. So if you travel the world, and Moen, you know, you travel the world kind of like I traveled the world, all right? So you've seen it firsthand. You go all these countries in the world, everybody has children, they have a home, you know, they have a car, but, you know, the traffic lights can work differently, the sizes of cars and vehicles. You go to Bangalore, a lot of people have scooters and bikes, and, you know, it's all transportation, right? So culture is how people get things done. And it can be different in different places. But in culture, what can't be different is our values, human values. And so, and that means you have to define them. At Citrix, it was respect, integrity, humility. And we meant it, all right? And we asked people, and I would see new employees every quarter. We'd have a luncheon, and they would go around and introduce themselves. And then at the end, I'd say, "Oh, you thought this was a free lunch? No, you're a captive audience, and I want to talk to you about our culture because everyone has said something about the culture and how much they like it, all right?" And I'd talk about the values, all right? But look, I, as CEO, am also Chief Culture Officer, and I take the pledge, but one person can't do it, all right? A culture is propagated by all of us together, and there are three things you have to do. First of all, you have to walk the talk. So if those are the values, all right, and you know what we mean by them, we expect that behavior from you, number one. Mm-hmm. The second thing is you have to talk the walk, which means, people tend to talk about things that are important to them, that they love, okay? You love the culture, talk about it. That spreads the word and keeps it a priority, right? And then the third thing is you got to participate in it and keep it, because invariably, no matter what job you have, you are going to be on a hiring team, and you're going to have to decide on the next person that comes in. And the next person that comes in has to have the values, okay? And if we do those three things, and we do them every single day, and we measure it and all that good stuff, right? Because we're a business, we measure things, then we are going to keep this fantastic culture that you believe in. And that doesn't require presence. It requires common values, and which define the way we work together. And then certain teams that have to be present, they can be present either all the time, part of the time, et cetera, et cetera. And it will work.
That's the best answer I've ever heard to that question. Wow.
Mark, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I have one last question and we can wrap it up. So I have seen under your leadership on how to build a culture. So I have first-hand experience of that. Under your leadership, I have seen channel, on how channel is built, how channel grows, to a point that every vendor followed the blueprint that you had developed. Mm-hmm. What is that one message you will give it to?
Well, I guess I would have to say believe, and from that belief, you have to evangelize, right? Because there's a lot of change involved in this. Just think about it, right?
Yep.
I mean, look what was required and how much time it took for people to go from broadcast televisions with DVD players and Xboxes plugged into them to online gaming, media streaming. I use YouTube TV for live TV, okay? So that takes a while.
Yep.
And it takes evangelizing coming from people who are early adopters, who believe and can answer the questions. Like I'm a Starlink customer, right? I don't want to go back to anything, all right? They have fiber in my, I don't want the fiber, all right? Because I believe in Starlink. I believe in its amazing potential. So I'm an evangelist for it. And I've sold a lot of Starlink, I guess, for them. I don't really care, because I think my friends that have adopted it say, Mark, you were right. This is a better way. And that makes me feel good.
Thank you so much again, Mark. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm looking forward to, as you say, that VDI is the future. Now we talked about 20 years we saw. Now there is another 20, 30 years for next generation to come in. Now there will be a better version of VDI that will be coming in. And the foundation that you're building with WorkSpot.
That's right.
Which is forward looking and talking about telemetry. We talk about AI, cloud, all those right thing is there. I'm just excited for the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing this next venture get to a level that we talk about that, okay, this is 2.0 that we talked about.
Well, thank you, Mohan. We're at WorkSpot. We're thrilled to be working with XenTegra, and and you guys have that amazing capacity to evangelize and transform customers, and we see that in you, and so that's why it's called partners, right? So thank you for that,
Thank you so much.
your belief in us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mark.
All right.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.